Hello, Jenny. Welcome to the Scaling Deep podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's so fun to talk to you today. I love talking to therapists. I seem to have a lot of therapists in my business world. So I want to I love hearing stories from them. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, so I am a trauma therapist. I was actually trained as a child psychologist, doing a lot of trauma work in the very beginning of my career. And then I think regardless of what kind of work you do, we can never predict where our career is going to take us. But now I still continue to do trauma work, but I primarily work with adults. And then I also work with fellow trauma therapists to help support them in their work because it can be really heavy doing this kind of stuff, even when you love it with your heart and soul.
Yeah, no, for sure. So have you been doing this for a long time? Like how have you kind of had your own practice? Like tell me a little bit more about like your business now and say also before you started shifting into more of a membership or one to many model.
Yeah, so I wear a lot of different hats. So I have a private practice, a small private practice that I've had for a few years. I also work for a larger organization, kind of in academia. I've been doing that for a number of years. And then just in the past year, did I start to shift to more of a one to many approach. In my membership, I support trauma therapists in managing something called vicarious trauma, which very kind of briefly, vicarious trauma, like when you are a helper or a healer, you kind of act like a sponge and you can soak up that stress and trauma, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just is part of the job.
Yeah.
But we often don't have a lot of supports and resources to like wring out that sponge. So that's something that I've done for a long time in my career, and I had done lots of training and teaching to other healthcare professionals, but I saw that there was this big lack of support for therapists and fellow trauma therapists in particular. So that's why a big reason why I started my membership, the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, was to start to create a space where we can have support in a one to many model.
That's awesome. So you kind of found a need of that you had a need in, and that's a lot of memberships do start like that. Like it's kind of almost the more traditional model of saying like, I just want to hang out with other people doing this
Yeah.
thing. And I know a lot of people who've started that. And actually, interestingly, it's almost more of the other people who I tend to do more work with. It's the ones that are like, I have the skill set and I know that people want something either more affordable than one-on-one or they're doing it more because they want to train, and that's a
Mhm.
different kind of membership type. Like I like to say there's three types. There's the mentoring and coaching, there's the education, and then there's the community building model.
Right.
Sounds like you kind of have that community building focus in yours.
For sure. So there's definitely content and stuff in there, but my primary goal with Brave is to create community because the top two risk factors for therapists and helpers and healers to burn out is isolation and then organizational factors like where they
Mhm.
work and stuff. And so my primary goal with Brave is to help reduce the isolation through community.
Awesome. And I love it. So you know the purpose of it. So it's not
Yeah.
just, I mean, that's the other thing too, is that being very clear on what that purpose is. And that helps instead of just saying, let's all hang out, because then it becomes this thing that people are, do I need it? Do I not need it? Like, how much
Mhm.
do I need to hang out? And how, so, and I think sometimes people fall into that challenge where they've created something and then they kind of forgot to create the real clear why.
Mhm.
And I love how clear you are about like, here's the reason why you need this. And then I guess if you don't need this, you don't need to join. And that's
Right.
perfectly fine, because I think what people tend to do is they want to appeal to everybody. Because I'm helping a lot of my members get really
Mhm.
niched down and focused. And it's some of them are struggling because they are so broad and they've come from a one to many model. So they're used to,
Mhm.
or sorry, one to one model. So they're used to helping people with wherever they are at. And in order to have a membership that actually is clear, they're going to have to say like, actually, this is the biggest problem that I can solve. And it might not appeal to say half of their past clients because they're
Yep.
suffering from a different kind of problem that's related. So I think that I'm helping them try to see that there's a lot of people in this world. And if you,
Totally. And I think I've
yeah,
gotten feedback that the fact that I am so niched to trauma therapists is, and I've experienced it too, is a huge strength in Brave, because not only am I really able to visualize and understand the narrative of my ideal customer, my avatar, the ICA,
yeah,
but when people join Brave, they know who they're joining with, right? Their fellow trauma therapists.
yeah.
And that's something that's really important, especially within this group of people, because even other therapists will say to me, like, oh my God, I don't know how you can do trauma work every day. And they mean it as a compliment, but it doesn't always feel that way. And it can feel really isolating. Like, okay, well, now I can't talk to you about anything.
So it's like,
And so
what's wrong with me that I
exactly,
like
like,
this
oh,
stuff?
I'm the weirdo that went into trauma.
Right.
And so having also for the customers, like the members of Brave, knowing, oh, these are all trauma therapists, like they get
They
it, we're
get it.
gonna
Yeah.
have a shared language, no one's gonna say like, I don't know how you can do that, is really powerful.
And there's still a lot of people who do that work.
Oh,
And
so many.
yeah, so it's not like, that's what I'm saying. I think people don't quite realize how many actual
Right.
tens of millions of people we're talking about when we're niching down. Like there's
Right.
still, we're still talking about massive amounts of people in the population. So it's
Mhm.
not like when you niche that far, you are going to, I think the challenge is you're going to be sort of less appealing to some of the people you already
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that you just don't need to get that kind of word out, which
Yeah.
I love. So did you have any, like, did you know right from the beginning that this is the niche and this is the specific focus, or did you have any temptation to make it broader?
I definitely had temptations to make it broader when I was first learning how to create a membership in an
Yeah.
online business.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes from that scarcity stuff, right? Of
Yeah.
like, well, is there going to be enough? And I totally agree with you. Like, yes, there totally are enough people even within a very specific niche. And I also am learning, I'm only a year into this, so it's
Yeah.
still so brand new, but because I was so clear about my niche and my avatar from the beginning, I'm actually already able to sort of flex that a little bit. And
Yeah.
so in some of my copy, I can talk about, like, when I say trauma therapist, I don't mean that you have to be trained in X, Y, and Z. I just mean that you work with people who've experienced trauma.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
do that now. I didn't have that kind of copy earlier. I was much more strict about it, but I can flex it a little bit.
Well, like you're kind of using the language to hook people who are want to be hooked, like
Mhm.
you're letting it be a little bit open to what they perceive as
Yep.
their interest. And it's okay for somebody to come into a membership and be curious.
Mhm.
And that is part of why those programs work so well, is because they tend to not be, well, some of them are really high ticket, but you wouldn't want to spend thousands of dollars a month to figure out whether or not
Right.
you like this field and yeah, so it makes it a little bit more open. So how do you find, like, that you organize the content or the deliverables as a community based program? Like, I guess what I'm wondering is that what are the expectations, do you think, and how do you see the value, like, or how do you facilitate that value? Because even if it's just a, hey, come in and your people are here, you still have to do something. So what do you do?
Right. Yeah. So I have a three-part framework that I use and that I work through every month. And so it's naming vicarious trauma, taming it, and reframing it. And so, like, right now we're in reframe it. And then next month we'll go back to name it. And so you just keep cycling
Oh,
through.
cool. Yeah.
And it works conceptually in terms of the ways I want to support my members, because dealing with vicarious trauma is a cyclical process, but it also means it provides structure every month. So I
Hmm.
release content at the beginning of the month, like a short video, maybe like a worksheet or something. And then that first Friday of the month, we have our content call where we can talk about that, but also it's just like coming together and talking about kind of whatever's coming up and just kind of being able to be together.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, on the third Friday of the month, we have a consultation call, which is something unique to like therapists. And it's a space where we can talk about cases. And
Mm-hmm.
so certainly vicarious trauma is going to come up there, but that is kind of more of this like open-ended community space that
Hmm.
is still has a container of like, this is a consultation call. And
Right.
therapists know what that means, you know?
Yeah.
And then I also am going to be adding in monthly guest expert trainings that'll be live and recorded that people can attend or just watch. But honestly, the greatest engagement is on the calls, which is so incredibly warming for me because that's what I was hoping for. And like, people are looking at the content, but it's really more, it helps to create a frame, a container,
Hmm.
and it encourages different kinds of conversation in the community.
Hmm.
But even still, people are showing up just to be together, which is great.
Yeah, it's their network of people. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that's like a huge value. So it does, yeah. So it sounds like yours is a community building, but and it's in it, but it so rather than you're being the expert or advisor, so it's not, but you're still connecting through calls, which I think some people really enjoy. I know that that's the kind of membership I like. I don't even need to speak or ask a question on a group call, but I'd much rather be on a Zoom call than watch someone on Facebook Live. Because if I do
Right.
have a question, it's really important for me to get that whatever that 5 minute response that
Yeah.
helps me move on, right? Um, so in terms of how to do that going forward. So I'm curious to know how big your dream is because I mean, membership business owners are amazing because it's so heartfelt and we give a lot away for very little bit, very little amount of money. And I'm just laughing. I was like checking your pricing. I'm like,
I
yeah.
know.
Anyways, and I always feel like we do, because it's a membership and because it has the potential for massive volume, we tend to undercharge a little bit because it doesn't always get to massive volume. So
Mhm.
do you see yourself having quite a large group? Where do you see it going?
Yes, is the short answer. I
Okay.
have a number of goals and ideas of where I want to take it. So my membership is a low ticket offer. Right now it's at $47 a month because I want it to be accessible for
Yeah.
therapists. I don't want it, I do not want their self-care. I don't really like that term, but essentially I don't want their self-care to feel like it is out of reach.
Right.
And ultimately, I would love to be able to use this to contract with like nonprofits and larger organizations and hospitals and to create like subgroups within Brave. Even I was thinking with this upcoming launch I have, there's a number of people who've reached out and they want their students to come to this workshop that I'm doing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I would love to have a student group, right? That's
Yeah.
even cheaper, but is like specific to students and has some different things for them. And so definitely big visions and very hopeful to reach those in the next, like 3 to 5 years. And right now, too, though, being able to connect with my founding members and to build the plane as we're flying it has been a really empowering experience in and of itself. And to be able to get such open and honest feedback from them so that I can make improvements in real time as I know that I have kind of these bigger goals in my brain.
It's invaluable. Having
Oh my
those
gosh. They're
connections to
so
the members.
incredible, the founding members, like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if like, even if the founding members, because I'll just put this out there, not everyone has a great founding member launch, or if they do, sometimes it's not the wrong people. Yeah, the wrong people. Like they
Yeah.
don't always aren't the ones that are super committed and end up staying. Like you just sometimes, I mean, in your case, you're very clear, the niche is clear, but a lot of people tend to kind of go through these like, oh, I thought my membership would be about this. And then it ended up being a
Mhm.
little bit more like this. And the ideal member kind of changed. But regardless, you still find that when you are small, you have this foundation of and people are asking the questions, you get to know their situation a bit, and then you can kind of piece together, well, what are the common needs? And that foundation is where we build the confidence to be able to serve 100 people or
Right.
500 people, because we know enough of the patterns, we see enough of the common challenges. And then we also get to decide, who is it that we are most sort of excited to help?
Yeah.
What position are they in when they join? Because there's going to be somebody who's going to be a little bit more apt to get the value from what we're offering. And that's also a personal choice, who we work better with, like brand new, super seasoned, it's really interesting. So I think that's like a time to cherish for everyone. And I just, and even if we start and it's smaller than we think, there's so much information in there that it's worth it than not starting and not having that connection.
Because my founding members launch was 11 people. So it's not like I have a huge, like massive cohort, and I've learned so much, and it has been such a powerful experience with them.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you get them? How did you get your first founding members?
Well, so in the lead up to my first launch, I did a lot of kind of the regular, like typical things of, I had figured out what's my business and my name. I made my Instagram. I have
So you're like started
Facebook
out
group.
with a membership, right? Is that what
Yeah,
you were
I
like?
did. Like I started out saying like, I'm going to do a membership.
That's awesome.
And so, and I also like, I invested in learning how to do this. I joined a group program that's specific for therapists who want to develop non-clinical side hustles. And that's a niche in and of itself, because we have to be careful of protecting our licenses and things like that. And so I went through this whole program, and it was so amazing to have that guidance. And I think I encourage everyone to invest in their businesses and to do trainings like that, because it gave me the building blocks and all the knowledge that I needed, and I just had to put it in place. And so then I learned how to like write a welcome sequence, how to make an opt-in and a tripwire, how to, write a lot, like do a launch. There's no way that, I could have figured it out, but it would have been a waste of my time.
You would have had less success, and then that doesn't like create the next level of success. And I think that's, I think failure is a great thing, but it's not, you want to actually have a hope in hell because you've got some foundation. Because you can, if you're missing super critical points, like compelling copy, articulating the value, even selling enough. That's one thing that people don't do. And it's like sometimes years for people to get to the point where they're finally actually saying, by the way, and it's gotten noisier and noisier and noisier, right? Like that's awesome. So I'm glad you did that. It makes a lot of sense. I think some people just feel like they've over invested in an idea that's not clear, and that is challenging, but those skills you'll bring next, forward for the idea that actually is clear.
Yeah. And that's something that I talk to business colleagues about a lot. Of these skills that we learned are so transferable. So regardless of what happens with one business, whether it keeps going or you add another one or not, you can use them in so many contexts.
Totally. So, okay. So did you do an event? Like, how did you get in front of your therapist? I think that's what we're kind of talking about a little bit, is that you learned how to do all the things to start the business, but still, just because people know all that and have all those foundations, finding the people is sometimes difficult. Did you have a network? Did you just do word of mouth? Like, how did you get going?
So it was a lot of all of those things. So fortunately, as a trauma psychologist, I have a good network, right?
Yeah.
So people kind of, and I started with this free Facebook group and just sort of like added all my friends and then said, add all your friends. I also did, I did bundles. So I did a therapist specific bundle to help quickly grow my list before my first launch.
Great.
And then,
how did you find out about that?
How did I find out about it?
Yeah.
Just within therapist circles.
Nice.
I think I think I found out about it from someone else who was doing the same group program as me, but also like, especially, on Facebook, the algorithm's like, oh, you want to know about all these therapists. And so I had seen it there too.
I think I just want to stress that point, because I think that it's often who you know at the
Mhm.
beginning that makes them, and actually always that makes a big difference. It's
Yep.
like those one connection can put you in touch with a group that you didn't know existed. And if you're too isolated from a business perspective, not just
Mhm.
therapist perspective, just you won't even know what's going on until after. And it
Yep.
can take time, way too long to learn about things. So you've got to invest almost just to find your network of other people
Yep.
who are going to put things in front of you.
And that was actually exactly what happened. So I found out about this initial bundle. It was called TheraBundle. And
Nice.
then through that contributor group, it was like 40 of us. Now I have all these biz besties that we collaborate and we do things together, even when our like niches are the same or very similar.
Yeah.
And it's really empowering too to not feel like we're competing against each other. We are truly working together, and it makes us so much stronger as businesses and business owners and entrepreneurs. And it's really, really been a wonderful experience. So that was a huge piece. And then
You
doing
did
like
build a
this.
list. You did launch
Yes.
to a list
So,
and a
yep.
group.
So
Yeah.
visibility stuff like on podcasts and stuff. And
Oh,
then
nice.
once I got into my first launch, I did a challenge. And so it was a 5-day self-care challenge that I did. And so that also helped to build my list. Launching helps to build a list.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people who signed up for the challenge were not from my list. I think because my niche is therapists, I am lucky because therapists like to hang out in Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And so I can post in Facebook groups like on Marketing Monday and actually get a lot of visibility.
Yeah.
So that's one good thing about my population.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but so I ran the challenge, and then from there did a pretty traditional launch sequence.
Great. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you for learning it all, for getting out there. It sounds like you didn't hesitate. Like you just decided,
Yeah.
I'm going to get out there. I
I just
mean,
had to do it.
people, yeah, but that's amazing because not everyone starts a business and then puts themselves on podcasts. But I think that's why that having the experience you have and the focus you have, it's like you can launch a group program or any kind of business if you're really focused on
Yeah.
your clarity of your value proposition. Like
Yep.
who you serve and what the outcome you would like to get for them. And I think a lot of people are not as clear on that when they start their next program or their business in general, and then they spend years, I'm just speaking from my own experience, sort of trying to reel that in to something
Mhm.
concrete, and that is still okay. It works out, but it's a longer path to that flexible lifestyle business that a lot
Right.
of us wanted in the first place because we're not able to get that consistency. And it's that clarity of who I serve and what do I do for them that is that big leap.
Mhm.
Sure, you could have 30 people in there if it was just a general therapist,
Right.
maybe, but it would be less tacky, like you'd be
Mhm.
struggling with, well, how do I appeal to more people? How do I write the copy? Like everything would just be taking so much longer.
Right.
And
Exactly.
whereas when people find you, they're like, oh, and then they stay. And
Right.
that's the ease and flow, right?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love that. So
Yeah.
you have a Facebook. I suppose you do host it on Facebook. Is that where your community lives? Or do you have
So it was, but I actually just moved it over to Heartbeat.
Oh, you did. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Yeah.
commented
So
in
I
my
did
group.
the AppSumo over the
Yeah.
holidays
Yeah.
and got that because I'd been wanting to get it off of Facebook anyway for a number
Mhm.
of reasons. I mean, I don't want Facebook really having all of our information. We do talk about sensitive
Mm,
information, like if we're not talking about clients, like one, I do not want them talking about clients on Facebook, but even just talking about our own experiences as trauma therapists and dealing with things like vicarious trauma, like I don't really think Facebook gets to be privy to that information.
yeah, that's a
I feel
good
very
point.
protective of it.
Yeah.
And then I mean, what if like someone hacked my account and then I'm in Facebook jail and
Jeez,
I
yeah.
can't even get to my community, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I decided to move it over to Heartbeat,
Nice.
and I'm just getting my current members in there. I think like 4 or 5 of them have completed their
I
onboarding.
know
Uh,
it can be hard. It can
I
be hard.
know.
No, I was on Slack and everyone was like, I don't know, some people liked it. Some people like used it really well, but they didn't love it. And
Mhm.
even that I'm like, how come everybody didn't leap instantly? But I think, people ebb and flow in memberships. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. Like they won't always engage. Like someone just posted yesterday and I have not heard from her in maybe like a month and a half.
Mhm.
And she's only joined for 2 months, but now she's kind of back.
Mhm.
And I think that's like, it's like you get to watch these patterns and know that they're just like going away for a little while. And that's okay because they're working
Right.
on something else. And a membership is meant to have that, like, you don't need to use it every 5 minutes to have it be worth
Mhm.
it.
Right. I
So they'll
totally
come.
agree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think the timing of that is really valuable. And especially because if you'd had like 50 people on Facebook, and especially you said therapists like to hang out there, you'd have a
Mhm.
really hard time. So I'm glad you took the leap
Yeah.
before it was really established there.
Me too. I'm glad that there was the AppSumo deal, the lifetime deal for Heartbeat, because I got it like super cheap because I have, I don't have a ton of money coming
Yeah.
into my business right
Yeah.
now. So I was able to do that. And yeah, it was the perfect timing. I'm
But it's actually a really good deal anyway. And that's another good
yeah,
thing
it
about it.
is.
It's
It
a good
is.
deal. Like, I was even thinking like, do I want to to upgrade to the next level? Because at some point, perhaps having a payment system on there is sort of that like ultimate, everything's in one place because, now
Mhm.
everything's zapped together and there's stuff like that. Right. So the
Yeah.
more you want this business to be super easy,
Mhm.
you want to at some point potentially, because I didn't have the version that has the
Yeah.
less expensive payment processing, and that just becomes that, okay, wow, it really is all in one place, and
Mhm.
um manually having to like do all these separate things, it's fine for now. But there's just a point where you switch that, right? It's like,
Right.
as I mentioned on my last podcast episode, moving from free to lower cost, but still, um, at some point, higher cost would even be more worth it
Mhm.
for fees and
Right,
things.
exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think, when we think about our tech, the mindset is so important because it's not about just getting stuff for free or cheap. It's about
Yeah.
how is this going to serve my business and also my members, like moving them to Heartbeat. Another thing was so that there was the content and the community in one place because
Yeah.
you can't house paid content inside of a Facebook group, technically. Like that's a
Yeah.
part of their rules. And so then I was having them go to Thrivecart Learn for content and then like
Right.
Facebook for the community. And they
Hmm.
weren't using it a ton anyway, because most of our engagement is on the live calls. And so it was a good timing to make that switch before this current launch. But now they just have to go to one place.
Yeah, that's great. I still have so much content that I can't properly embed it on because they don't host the videos themselves on
Hmm.
Heartbeat. So I'm still on Zenler, which is fine. But it's more like the Slack wasn't really the headquarters. So Zenler had to
Yeah,
be my headquarters. It was like that was the page where you come and learn and find out about everything.
right.
And now it's on Heartbeat. So when they get sort of zapped, their zapped invite
Right.
from Thrivecart, they go in, they've got all the pages, all the guides that say, here's what you do, here's how to use this. Introduce yourself right away, which that
Right.
takes a step out of it because before I used to ask them to do that.
Right.
And then they're able to link to all the like the course content, which is totally fine. When you're in a course, you're in a
Right.
course, right? Like once you started down that. So I just feel like that brought the community together a little bit better.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I mean, I still can't get kind of my linear brain sort of was like looking for the stacks a little bit
Hmm.
but it's easy enough. And the calendar, oh my goodness,
I
like
know, I'm so excited about I'm
no
not forcing
excuses
people
for
to use
missing.
the events this month because it's our transition month, but I
Yeah.
did send them an email, the reminder email for our call tomorrow saying, this is the last month that I will be sending you these emails. All of our events, you need to use the
I
Zoom
love it.
link in Heartbeat. Like I'm not doing that anymore. I'm so excited for it.
I made that decision as I was writing an email on Sunday that I wrote a really lengthy email of what's on in February. And then as I was writing it, I said, well, there's a lot of doubling up. So, and because now this does this weekly digest,
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm not gonna like, you're gonna have to be on here or you
Hmm.
just have to refer to this one email, because I'm realizing that I'm writing the same things in both places and it's taking
Yeah.
too long. And I would actually rather them have my marketing emails to see how I'm putting out my content and
Hmm.
see what I'm sharing and see how I'm running the business overall. And get kind of have them in that loop rather than just repeating all the same information, because some
Right.
people are getting it twice because they're paying attention.
Right.
So that like hopefully will just, that digest will help me just go, okay, you're going to get this via email anyway, unless they turn off their notifications, which is fine.
Yep.
And I'm going to just send out that one monthly email to them. And
Yeah.
like, I love it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, because it's like thinking about how do we run these programs with that leanness, right? Like
Mhm.
memberships are meant to be lean. And yes, I know when you get more and more people in there, they get, I guess, more administratively heavy, right? So,
Mhm.
and that's that whole like someone's canceling and someone's renewing and someone's this, and we're going to have to pay attention to some of that. But I think at some point we didn't do this to just do more admin.
Right. Totally.
So the streamlining that tech is amazing.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit more about your launch plans. Like, what are you doing next? How are you planning to grow it? What are your challenges and goals around that?
Yeah, so this launch, I'm technically in launch mode right
Oh,
now. I am promoting to my event coming up at the end of the month, which is going to be a workshop. It's called the Brave Vicarious Trauma Workshop.
awesome.
And it's a live version of a workshop that has been available for sale, but I've never run it live.
Ooh,
And doing it live is honestly serving two purposes. One, it's allowing me to re-record it and then put an even better version up for people who already have access and who want to buy it in the future. But even more so, it's bringing people together live because community is the central part of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective.
nice.
And so I'm promoting for that. I decided not to do a challenge for this launch. A couple of reasons. I did like doing the challenge, but it was a lot, and it
It's a
was
lot of
kind
work.
of stressful with a smaller audience. Certainly my audience is larger now, but thinking about just the natural decline of live engagement over the course of a launch. And in thinking about streamlining things, this just made much more sense. And I think that it is more
And they're
appealing to
busy.
people too. Yeah, exactly. Like people, I don't know that they want to do a 5-day challenge, you know?
No, I mean, I don't know that the kind of people that tend to join my program are the kind of people who could have the time for that. Like
Right.
it did not, that has not ever worked as well for me as doing
Right.
smaller things.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be leading up to that at the end of February. And then I'm going to do cart open from March 1st through 10th. And I'm actually doing away with bonuses and stuff this time around. There's a couple intentions behind that. One, there's nothing that my gut has said like, "Oh, this would be a really, like, meaningful bonus to
Yeah.
people." And I'm not just gonna, like, arbitrarily create something. And also, I think for me, it's important that the members inside of Brave all basically have access to the same thing. And I don't want to have to deal with like this person has this level of access and this one has this level. Eventually, it'd be great to have a tiered model within the membership,
Yeah.
but that's not where I'm at. And so it's like simplifying. I'm not just going to arbitrarily create something,
No.
and I'm just going
Good.
to have cart open after the event, and then through to that next Friday, and nurture during cart open, and see
Nice.
what happens. So it's an experiment. It's a different approach from the last launch, and I'm intentionally changing certain variables and just to see what the outcome is.
Yeah, like I think your price point isn't so low, so high that they need the bonus to kind of get pushed
Yeah.
over the edge. Do you keep the cart closed?
So technically no. Like after my first launch, I didn't actually like do
Close
anything
it.
on the
Yeah.
page to close it, and I had one person join after. They just reached out. I also am, after this launch, going to start working on more of an evergreen sequence, like welcome
Nice.
sequence anyway. Um, Depending on how this launch goes, assuming that I reach, whatever goals I set and I feel like it's a good launch. So but also like if someone wants to join Brave and they can join, they
Yeah,
just
I
need
know for
to
sure.
reach
I'm
out to
just, it's more
me.
of a sales, conversation,
Exactly.
right? Like that's why we open and close things or limit
Mhm.
the access. It's because we force people into making a decision and we force them to pay
Right.
attention.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
just honestly, it's like that. Oh, I got to go and drop something off somewhere, and it's not a rush and you've got room for it in your house in a cupboard somewhere.
Right.
You just don't do it.
Right. Exactly.
If
It
if
sits
you have
there
an open
for
house and
weeks.
someone's going to be looking in your cupboards, you will take it.
I know.
So that's why we do it. And I was just curious to know
Mhm.
how you're working
Yeah,
through
and
that.
so like I haven't finalized my sales emails for this launch yet. So I haven't really figured out how I'm going to talk about the cart closing yet.
Yeah.
Part of it is that, with the next launch, I'll probably increase the price. And
Yeah.
so that's part of kind of why, to encourage people to join now.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a big one. That's a big
yeah,
urgency kind of and if it's real, if you're like this is the last chance you're going to get this at this price, that
right,
is the center of your launch. That is your
right.
your it's like a bonus is an urgency thing as well and scarcity and so is a price increase. It's just a
Hmm.
reality. So I don't think you need to have 5 of them. I mean, you're talking
Right,
to a smaller crowd who know you a little bit. So yeah,
right.
that's but you're thinking it through. And I think that's really valuable because that's what we
Thanks.
need to do is actually plan it out. So we
Yeah.
are consistent.
Yeah.
Awesome.
To the best of our abilities, right?
The best of our abilities. So there's a little bit of winging it and a little bit of thinking it out and just,
Yeah.
but trusting that those sort of tactics do work. And if we don't have them, they don't really work, which is like
Mhm.
kind of just a hard lesson sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, where can we find you online?
So my website is braveproviders.com.
Love it.
And if anyone wants to check out the workshop, it's braveproviders.com/VT workshop live. It'll be on February 28th at 7 o'clock Eastern.
Amazing.
And then there'll be a
Awesome.
replay that's available too. So
Perfect. Well,
yeah.
I hope this gets across to some trauma providers who are looking for some people to hang out with
Yeah,
who
me
get it.
too. Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly. Who get it?
All right. Well, thanks so much for being with us today and sharing your story.
Thanks, Lisa. I really appreciate it.